Serverless Fridays. This is the show we host every Friday talking about how serverless technologies is helping organizations of all sizes be agile and be innovative. Today I have with me Archis Gore, who is CTO of Polyverse. He is going to tell us why serverless is cool.
Hi, I'm Archis Gore. I'm CTO here at Polyverse Corporation. We're a cybersecurity company that focuses on preventative security. So we prevent attacks from ever happening, even if the attacks are never known or the vulnerabilities are unknown. And with like no perf overhead or in a very operationally easy manner. That's who we are. That's what we do. So on the serverless tools that we use, it's a whole gamut of, I consider S3 as serverless, right? I consider anything that where I don't have to think about servers, infrastructure, or pieces or how it works, right, is serverless. So we use a bunch of Lambda. Obviously, that's kind of the poster child of serverless, but there's a lot more serverless that people don't think about. SQS, managed services, or anything that has an interface. Um, and and this is across clouds, but so we basically strive to be all serverless wherever possible. So why is serverless interesting? There's actually two main reasons, and none of them to me have to do with operations. They have to do with accountability and responsibility. Um, when so I was on the transition. I joined the industry at the transition when I never ever saw a physical rack. I've never seen a server in my life. All the machines I've ever used were cloud hosted VMs, right? So like EC2 would be the very first servers I ever touched, that ran a service for me. So with that in mind, there was the bigger problem to me as I've moved up in the world and as I have had larger and larger responsibilities, which is when my job or our job as software engineers is to solve a problem, is to solve a key problem. And typically, traditionally, a lot of random Y2K is a great example of this, where the people who were building banking software had to worry about the bits, right? And that decision affected us a lot. And so in my career, I've seen a lot of that blame game going around. Is like, well, my code was perfect, but this happened, or but that happened, or but I had to code for Java's memory management, or I had to code for the garbage collector. And those are the things that really annoy me. As a developer, they annoy me because I don't care. I don't want to care. As a manager, they annoy me because, you know what, if I'm making a code on a platform where you get that excuse, that's on me. And so serverless is interesting to me for more of the correctness aspect of software, and for making sure that, hey, if this doesn't work, then it's the service owner's fault. If it does work, then it's your job to then solve the problem. So that's why it's interesting to me personally. Yeah, so challenges with serverless. I think, very early on, I was lucky enough to start functional programming. Right, I come from a very long Erlang background, and that helps how I think about problems. The biggest challenge when people write serverless code, or especially when even I write serverless code, is state management. Um, because serverless, more than often, tends to also be stateless. And the biggest challenge with serverless, I would say, is statelessness. You can't, you don't pause, you don't resume, you don't there is no state. You have to make sure everything that you store is reliably stored in a reliable third party store. Even if it's local, you should treat it as a service, as opposed to, so state should be a service and not embedded in your app. I know that this is like almost a cliche in the world right now. Functional programming helps you think serverless in a very easy way. If you have any experience with small talk, very similar, right? Erlang, small talk, Lisp, whatever. But the bottom line is, think about you know the how you overcome the challenge is, and I have a very simple rule: make it work for one, and then by induction I can solve for n, and that's how you solve. So traditionally, when we solve problems, even in school, when we learn system architecture, we learn to solve for thousands, right? You build a database, and you learn to build a database for millions. You build a software for millions of airline bookings, right? And it's almost counterintuitive, but the best way to solve serverless challenges in building serverless is to think in one. Can you make one airline booking? Can you make one key value entry? Can you make one S3 blob storage? And if you can solve for one, right? The ops team. I mean, I hate ops teams as a concept, but other people can then take it to n. It's super easy. But if you are solving for n, you're going to make it really hard for someone else to take it to 10n. Best practices for developers: don't use globals. Just never use a global. That should almost be a non-serverless best practice as well. Don't use local storage. Connect to a proper resilient service, whether it's like a remote block store, or a remote file system, whatever have you. Think about solving for one. Don't optimize for n. Don't prematurely optimize. Basically, just all the genuine software best practices that we've learned over the years. But you have to take them seriously, right? So like, you can't have an atomic that you increment across multiple instances of a lambda, and not unless you've externalized it. And so what was taught, or what we think of as best practices, now have to be necessary practices, and that's the best I can say. So where do serverless technologies go from here? I imagine us getting to, you know, I imagine we will be talking more in terms of logic. Programmers will be average people. And that's like a programmable VCR. My mom can program the VCR, right? But a programmable computer, actually, my mom can, but my grandma couldn't. Now, what I think where serverless is going to go is for us to be able to, the person who's thinking of the business logic, the person who knows how to take a set of inputs and then have a set of outputs, like solve the problem, right? The input is the problem, the output is the solution. And for someone to encode that, the person who knows how to do that, for them to be able to encode that. And so, like, you know like a great example is, so super back in the day, I learned how to make PCBs by hand, right? Learned how to etch circuits. Now I actually go to a website and I upload my diagrams, and then they ship me one, right? And I no longer have to know, even though I'm a circuit designer, I'm no longer the circuit builder, I'm no longer the board builder, right? And I think that's where serverless is going to go, where more and more people are going to be able to encode their solutions, their problem statements, transformed to solutions into computers, into services, and into systems. And so we will. Oh, you know what? The best analogy, and I'm a big fan of Simon Wardley, if you haven't guessed, but it's basically, we are going to make computers or services into the electric grid, where we no longer have to understand how electricity works, but we all have it. And that is a far cry from 100 years ago, when everyone who had an electric connection had to understand how it worked.
Awesome. I think Archis, this is really great. In fact, I got some blog ideas from what you said, and this is fantastic. And people are going to learn a lot from what you said today. And thank you very much for your time. And it was great having you in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to more conversation going forward.
Of course, thank you. It's an honor to be on here.
This was fantastic conversation with Archis today, and if you'd like to have listen to such feedback from developers on how serverless can reshape our industry, hit this like button so that we know that you are liking the content, and also click subscribe to the channel so that you will get notified every time we post a new content. This was great having Archis today, and we will have another guest in the next Serverless Friday. Every Friday, we try to post a video on serverless so that you can gain more insights into how you can use serverless for your organization.